Hello and welcome to Painting with Stephen episode 2. Good morning, afternoon or evening depending where you are, and thank you for tuning in again. So as you can see, I've started with a black gessoed canvas again, and now I'm just going in with a very subtle blue, a stormy blue, again with ultramarine mixed with umber and Payne's grey. I've also, as you can see, got a little chalk sketch going on here. So this is going to be a wave scene, a very intense, stormy wave scene. But right now, as you can see, I'm doing my sky. The horizon line is pretty high, just because obviously the focal point is the wave. So I have, made the sky a smaller part of this painting overall. And now I'm just going in and adding, some clouds with a fan brush. Now, this is not a complicated sky, okay? The sky is not the focal point, so this is merely just a moody, stormy sky. And these clouds are a mixture of Payne's grey, umber, and that's it. It's obviously blending with the blue that's already on the canvas. And then it's getting blended out. So obviously I used that big brush there to blend out the clouds I already had, but now I'm going in and adding another layer with a fan brush, just so that I can, have still a little bit of roughness and a little bit of intrigue with my brush strokes, because blending out everything makes everything look nice and silky and smooth and homogenized, but sometimes you do want some drama with your brush strokes. So I like a little bit of choppiness, a little, not everything overworked. I think oftentimes there is almost the urge to overwork painting sometimes, and oftentimes you should just leave stuff alone. But also, working and getting something the way you want it is part of the artistic process. So realistically, blending stuff out, reworking it, blending it out again, that's all just part of how I paint. So right now what I'm doing is just continuing to work on the sky, blending out the bits that I sort of wish to blend out, and then having some choppiness still and some intrigue with my brush strokes in parts of the clouds. And I'm adding a small bit of light, just a tiny bit of light to the centre, right? And now I'm adding in my waves, which are ultramarine blue and Payne's grey at this point. Okay, so a sort of nice watered down, and by watered down I mean it is not watered down linseed oil, but it's desaturated with the Payne's grey slightly, not as much as the sky though. And I'm just getting rid of that chalk with my finger and sort of blurring the horizon line very, very slightly. Okay, but basically what I'm doing is I'm putting that Payne's grey blue, ultramarine blue mixture in, and then I'm getting a palette knife and going in with some flake white hue, and I am just scratching out a tiny little, hint of choppy waves with my palette knife. As you can see, I blended it out, and now I'm coming in again with the palette knife, just so that I have almost two layers of sort of detail. So I've got one layer of the blended out waves that look sort of almost like nice and homogenized and smooth, and then I've got the palette knife again giving some intrigue and choppiness and some excitement to the strokes because of how the paint breaks. Now I'm going in again, same blue, mixture of Payne's grey, ultramarine blue and just getting colour on the canvas. That's what I'm doing here. Now, these waves, okay, took ages to get right. Ages. Now, I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about a more abstract idea, which is perseverance in art. Most of the time, finishing a painting and getting a painting to its conclusion and to the way you want it is 90% just gumption, confidence, and fighting through the urge to quit. Because, back when I was learning how to paint, I'm a self-taught artist, so back when I was learning how to paint, watching other great artists on YouTube, and learning from them and learning all the techniques that they were showing, sometimes I would look at paintings that I was doing and go, man, this sucks. This is horrendous. But a lot of the time, that's your instinct. But just like with any creative process, like music, which I also make, or writing, or in this case art, you need to actually just have the confidence to see what you're doing through and continue to do what you're doing until it looks good to you. Even if the adrenaline's going a little bit, your heart's going a little bit, and you're going, I'm gonna mess this up, you need to just continue to do what you're doing and fight through all of that sort of pressure, because the pressure is absolutely meaningless. At the end of the day, there's absolutely nothing to be genuinely afraid of, is there? It's all just perception of what should be, right and what should be wrong. But realistically, if you have a vision in your head, you need to follow it through to its conclusion, and oftentimes it can lead you to your desired place. Sometimes it might not, sometimes it might not work out, but at the end of the day, who cares? This is the artistic process. This is part of the artistic process, and being an artist, sometimes what you're trying to do will not work, but that shouldn't matter. At the end of the day, that means that you just need to try again next time. Everything is a learning process at the end of the day. So I am reworking these waves here, right? Obviously this is a grand, big, ginormous cauldron. It's a stormy wave scene. So I'm going in with the palette knife to give it choppiness, and to how the paint breaks when it's thick on a palette knife, just to give it intrigue. So I'm scraping the paint along to give it these big, broad brush strokes. But I'm not going to keep it like that. If you watch until the very end, you'll see that what I'm really doing here is actually more just getting paint on the canvas. And a lot of the time, getting paint on the canvas, this again sort of almost ties in with the confidence thing. It doesn't mean that it has to stay there. You can blend it out, you can take it off, you can rub it in, you can rearrange what you're doing. But right now, I'm just adding paint to the canvas with a palette knife just to get some sort of details in, some choppiness in, and I'm blending it out, redispersing it, adding it back in again. This is, all just part of the process of getting it to look the way I want it, right? So, it may not work straight away, but the whole point is just continuing to persevere until you're doing it. When you actually look at the way that I've sketched these waves, okay, you'll notice that they're almost like mountains, in the sense that you've definitely got shadow sides and you've got where the light's hitting it. That is very important when you're trying to paint anything, obviously, but when you're trying to paint something like a wave or a mountain or a rock or anything like that, you need to take into account that what gives your painting form, okay, is the shadows and the usage of colour. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm actually adding in completely different colours. This is a mixture of phthalo green, ultramarine blue, and Naples yellow. Now, I absolutely adore these colours for seascapes, because the phthalo green mixed with the Naples yellow gives this incredible seafoam green colour, okay, that you can use to capture light. Okay, I want this eye of the wave on this side to capture the light, you know, like, because that will be its thinnest point, so when it's crashing, I want that light to just be encapsulated in that wave there. Now, as you can see, this is not an exact science, although I want that colour to be there, and I've just boldly put that colour on. What you're going to see is me reworking it, dulling it down with more ultramarine blue, dulling it down with Payne's grey, but I still am trying to keep that phthalo green and Naples yellow intact in the eye of the wave. But this is all just sort of getting the form and the shape of the wave right. You know, I'm coming in with a palette knife and trying to almost just create that sort of shape of the wave, you know, the way it's gonna, you know, chunder over, the way it's gonna crash in, okay? And that's all I'm doing here. I'm trying to get the form of the wave right, so that I can then continue to rework it with the shape of the wave in my mind. Getting shape and form right and getting the shadows right so that it looks three-dimensional, and so that you can get the shape in your head and solidified in your head, is one of the most important parts of this process. This is where I'm dulling down the colour because it's too extreme. So I'm just throwing in some Payne's grey and some ultramarine blue in here. But again, as you can see, I've kept that eye of the wave lighter with that phthalo green mixture, blending it all out with a big, you know, kitchen rag, blending it out, you know, so that I can still have that sort of seafoam green colour in the eye of the wave, but dulling down the rest of it into a nice sort of bluish colour. And now I'm going in with a fan brush, and I am, you know, re-adding my lights, my highlights, and again, keeping with that form, keeping the form of the water. Like, imagine the water actually crashing down. This is what I'm trying to do. And obviously now I'm adding in this big dramatic slush, this big crashing wave sort of foam here. I was very tempted to do a little trick that I sometimes do, where I would get a really watered down light colour, like, say, you know, like a flake white hue or whatever, watered down with linseed oil, and I would actually splash it with my finger on to create tiny little dots. But I decided not to do that in this instance, just because I wanted it a bit more traditional. So as you can see, I'm adding more Naples yellow in, more flake white hue in, and I'm blending it out a little bit. And as you can see that big splash at the top, that's three-dimensional because of where I've put my shadows. I've put my shadows at the bottom and I've put my lights at the top, which makes it look three-dimensional. That's such an important detail of how this sort of thing works. Okay, it won't look three-dimensional if you don't do that. So as you can see, I'm adding more Naples yellow in as my highlights, and I'm blending it out to make it look like a wave, like a big crashing wave. I mean, that's the idea anyway, you know. Obviously, right at this point, right now in the painting process, I am, you know, somewhere between halfway panicked and manic. So, you know, maybe oftentimes I don't even really know what the hell's going on. I'm just going, how can I make this look the way I want it, you know, by continuing to rework it and rework it and rework it. So that's the process. So I'm just continuing to work on this this left side of the canvas, trying to get it the way I want, and then I'm blending out this other side. But I've decided, do you know something? I want to add some phthalo green to this as well, just to give it that sort of almost slight luminosity and slight seafoam green colour on that side. Not as light as obviously where I've added in the Naples yellow on the left side, but I do want to just add the little hints of it. So I've put some on my big brush there, my 1-inch brush, and while blending out the right side, I have added in phthalo green too, and now I'm getting paint on this side, the extreme right, and I'm adding yet another wave, a much smaller wave, and blending it out, and that's what's going on right now. Just to, again, give it that 3-dimensional form. Imagine you're painting mountains of water. That's what you want to imagine. You want it to have peaks and troughs. You want it to have 3-dimensional form. Okay. Now, I debated this for a little bit, so I wanted to add a sort of cliff rock, here. So I'm using umber and I'm using Payne's grey to do that. However, I was also going to add a shadowy figure in here standing on the cliff, but I decided against it. I never ever have figures in my paintings, really, because the reason that I paint landscapes is to put myself in it. I want, to take what's in my mind and put it onto the canvas so that I can almost be within the scene. It's like a dreamscape to me. That's the reason that I love art. That's what moves me when I look at other paintings. I want to imagine myself in the scene. So very often, most landscapes I do don't have figures in them. I'm thinking about maybe changing that, like with some of my next paintings, but pretty much every single painting I've painted thus far hasn't had figures in it. So although I was doing a little detail of a figure that I was going to work on at the bottom, I decided against it and decided to completely erase it from the painting and just keep the cliff, because I was like, I don't really like that. I want to imagine myself standing on the cliff. So that's what I ended up doing. And yeah, I mean, this is it, like I just reworked it until it looks the way I wanted it, and this is the finished result. So thank you so much for tuning in yet again to episode 2, and I hope that you can take my ramblings and try and find some way to make them useful to you, and I hope you tune in for episode 3. So thank you very much and goodbye.